Hello, we're continuing to read from Lost Christianities, and we're continuing to read about the Gnostics. The one great thing about this book, besides the information, is that you can go and read chapters and go back and read chapters. Great reference book that everybody should have. There's a companion book called The Lost Scriptures. I have that too. Um, I used to get them when they used to offer these special books. You buy one and you get three free or something like that. I used to do that. Back when books were a thing. So let's continue. We were dealing with the origins of the Gnostics. This classical view of suffering continued to affirm the Exodus theology that God is God of Israel who will intervene on their behalf, and yet it explains the ongoing problem of suffering. But what happens when the people do return to God, do try to keep his ways, and still suffer? The difficulty with the classical prophetic view is that it does not explain why the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer. This shortcoming led to a number of various or variant theologies in ancient Israel, including those of the books of Job and Ecclesiastes, both directed against this prophetic view, and to that of a group of Jewish thinkers and modern scholars have called apocalypticis. The term comes from the Greek word apocalypsis, which means the unveiling or the revealing, used of these people because they believed God had revealed to them the ultimate secrets of the world that explain why it contained such evil and suffering. Jewish apocalypticism arose in a context of intense suffering some 200 years before Jesus, when the Syrian ruler who had control of Palestine, the Jewish homeland, persecuted Jews precisely for being Jewish. For example, circumcision, the central sign of the covenant union with God, was forbidden on pain of death. Clearly, for many Jewish thinkers, this kind of suffering, contrary to the classical view of the prophets, could not come from God, since it was the direct result of trying to follow God. There must be some other reason for the suffering, then, and some other agent responsible for it. Jewish apocalypticists developed the idea that God had a personal adversary, the devil, who was responsible for suffering, that there were cosmic forces in the world, evil powers with the devil at their head, who were afflicting God's people. According to this perspective, God was still the creator of the world and would be its ultimate redeemer. But for the time being, the forces of evil had been unleashed and were wreaking havoc among God's people. Jewish apocalypticists maintain, however, that God would soon intervene and overthrow these forces of evil in a cataclysmic show of force, that he would destroy all that opposed him, including all the kingdoms that were causing his people to suffer, and that he would then bring in a new kingdom in which there would be no more sin, suffering, evil, or death. These apocalypticists maintained that those who were suffering needed to hold on just a little longer, for God would soon vindicate them and give them an eternal reward in his kingdom. How soon would this be? Truly I tell you, some of you standing here will not taste death until you see the kingdom of God having come in power. These are the words of Jesus, Mark 9:1. Probably the best known Jewish apocalypticist of antiquity, or as he says later, truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Mark 13:30. Jesus and his earliest followers were Jewish apocalypticists, expecting the imminent intervention of God to overthrow the forces of evil. To this extent, they were like many other Jews of the first century, including those who produced the Dead Sea Scrolls. Jesus appeared to have thought that God was soon to send the Son of Man from heaven as a judge against all those who aligned themselves against God. In this, too, he agreed with other apocalyptic prophets of his own day. But after Jesus died, his followers came to think that it was Jesus himself who would soon return from heaven on the clouds as a cosmic judge of the earth. The Apostle Paul, our earliest Christian author, believed that Jesus would return in judgment in his lifetime. So we're dealing with suffering, and that's what we're dealing with today. Why are we suffering? Why do we live in a society where police can just kill people, black and white, brutalize us? Why are we living in a place where homeless people live right outside of empty houses and apartments? Why do we live in a place where people are living in tent cities while Jeff Bezos is worth 130 billion, 140, 150, 160 billion dollars? We have a society where the wealthiest man can end homelessness with his wealth by himself and still be the richest man in the world. And we need to start wondering why we're suffering through these things physically, materially, mentally, and spiritually. Until next time, I want to thank you for your support. And I want to say take care of your mind, take care of your body, and please be safe.